Good afternoon, fellow TikTokers. This is Russ from Russ's Rambling on in the wee hours of the afternoon. Well, fellow TikTokers, it is a beautiful January. I have got a couple days off. I needed a break from work. I don't know about you, but I'm just completely burned out and sick and tired of working and sick and tired of everybody's shenanigans. And I just decided that this was enough and I just needed to get away. I got dressed up today and I got in the car and I went away. It's just one of those awful Mondays where I just don't want to be home and I'm just tired of doing things. I want to talk a little bit about just the certification of the election this afternoon and what we can look forward to in the next 4 years. I figure that in the next 4 years, our country should be in a full-blown recession, if not an all-on-out world depression. And this is what the American men wanted in this country. They wanted to break women. They wanted to break people's opportunities and rights. They wanted to see people go broke. They wanted to see the stock market just fall into a shit charee. And I have to agree. We're going to be in for some hard times. And we're going to see a lot of things stripped from us, including Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. I believe our veterans are going to lose all of their rights. They're going to lose their veterans benefits, the opportunity for them to receive health care. I believe our veterans will not be treated with the respect that they deserve. And I believe for the most part that we are going to go back to what we had in the late 1960s and early 1970s, a bunch of garbage. Houses will be run down. People will be living foot to mouth. There will be no opportunities available. Whatever you get, you're going to have to work goddamn hard for it to get it. You're not going to be able to go out to eat. You're not going to be able to do anything. You basically are going to sit home and you're basically going to go to work. When my grandparents sold their tavern in Fairwater, Wisconsin, and they went to live on Church Street because my grandma was a whiny bitch and cried and whined that she didn't want to be in business anymore and she wanted to live in a house, she went to work at a Manco in a sewing factory. And my grandpa worked as much as he could, but his health was against him, and he couldn't anymore. And he stayed home more than anything. He started a concrete business and had my dad and his brothers pouring concrete and building basements and walls. But those lazy crybaby motherfuckers, they didn't want to do that. They wanted to be Billy Big Rigger and call in semis and do stupid shit. And they could have had a successful fucking mason business. My grandpa tried to reinvent the wheel, but it was too late. The boys were bullheaded and stubborn. He was burned out. He was sick. He was sick from the Second World War because he worked hard in the Second World War behind enemy lines. And when he got out of the Second World War, he fought hard with his brother to start a stockyard business, of which failed because his fucking brother Herman Bayer was a goddamn drunk and a loser because of the Malzahns. And I'm not going to shut my mouth about it. My grandpa did everything he could. But in the end, his health wore out, and in 1972, he ended up in the Veterans Hospital in Milwaukee, and his heart was dead. The bottom half of his heart was pretty much gone. It was dried up. They said Bernie's got 10 years to live. He is a very sick man. There ain't much he can do, and that was the end of it. But my grandpa worked hard. He worked very hard to establish himself, and he worked very hard to put that tavern together. And my grandma wanted no part of it. All she wanted to do was go fucking to work 8 hours a day and come home and sit in her house. And she thought she was going to have the life of Riley. But they couldn't afford the house. My grandpa couldn't afford the payments for the taxes and the bills and the upkeep. So he sold it and bought a farmette on the other street, Washington Street. And he had some cattle. And he remodeled the house, but he did such a half-assed job. And he did it because he didn't know what to do. He was at a wit's end. And she didn't make that much money in the sewing factory, and she gave up her livelihood. She was a whiner and a pisser and moaner and a crybaby bitch. And I'm not afraid to get on here and say that there was no reason to sell the tavern. Because in the mid-60s to the early 70s, Gene Scott and Marlene Scott bought it, and they made a fucking fortune. And Clay and Donna Paminer bought it, and they made a fortune. Everything that my grandparents worked for, they threw it away because Carol had to have that house on Church Street. And Carol wanted to work it at Manco. But in the end, it didn't work out the way Carol wanted it. And she ended up with a butcher block house, a ranch-style house that was an old farmhouse full of bats. And she didn't get anything out of the deal. She got it run up her ass. And my point is, there was no money back then. My grandparents borrowed money in the early 60s, mid 60s to fix up their house in Brandon that my great grandparents had. And my grandpa borrowed $14,000 to fix that house up. And they only got the kitchen and the bathroom done, and the rewiring done, and some new windows in. They never had enough money to finish because every time you turned around, the cost of living was so bad that they couldn't make ends meet. And my grandpa worked hard at Shaler National Rivet in Waupun, but you couldn't make it. And he too couldn't make it. They ate out of their garden, and Grandma fended for as best as she could. And my grandpa worked his butt off, and it was when Jimmy Carter took office that they were able to first make some money. They were able to afford to get the house painted the rest of the way, the walls finished, and carpeting put down. And it was when Jimmy Carter took office that they took the fuel oil furnace out of the basement and put in a brand new natural gas furnace. And it was when Jimmy Carter took office that my grandpa saw all the money that he invested begin to make the returns he needed in order to make ends meet. I'm going to tell you guys something. Prior to that, that house didn't have much done to it, and they didn't have much at all of anything. And we went through hard times with the Nixon administration. We went through hard times when Gerald Ford was in office. People lost their jobs, and unemployment was at record highs. And people didn't have food stamps back then. People got shut off on their natural gas and electricity. And if they couldn't work or their kids didn't work for a local farmer, they couldn't fend. I know one lady that heated her house with the furniture that she had in her home in their potbelly stove because they could not afford natural gas to heat their house. And we're coming back to that. We're coming back to this type of a lifestyle. In the next 4 years, you're going to see things very bad. You're going to see people moving in with their kids and kids moving in with adults because the cost of living is going to be through the roof. And jobs will not be plentiful. I really have to say it, but I do not think that Donald John Trump knows what the hell he's doing, and I don't think he's going to run this country very effectively. But all these tea rump lovers and these fucking Christians that go sit in these shake and bake churches, they're going to find out. We're in the find out phase of the FAFO. You see, years ago, I belonged to those shake bake churches. And when all these people were making money and I was fending or looking for a job, not one of those Christians helped me get a job. Not one of those Christians gave me money to pay my light bill. Not one of those Christians helped me with food or anything. Christians don't care. Christians are not for Christians. Christians are for their bottom line in their own pocket. And I just wanted to get on here to tell you this afternoon that whatever goes on, we're going to see the bottom fall out of this pretty bad. My mother isn't going to have Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid to fall back on. At some point, she'll probably have to live with us because Donald Trump has made it that way. You want to talk about the Waltons? That's what we're heading to. The 1930s Waltons, because we've got dumb fucking idiot and stupid ass in the White House, and they're stupid. They're fucking stupid. And they don't know what the hell they're doing, and they sure to God don't give a fuck about the middle class, the working class, and the poor. But all you fucking churchies, you think that's all going to work for you? Well, your pastor don't give a rat's ass. He wanted his 501c protected. He thinks that she's going to continue to make you give money so he can line his coffers and run around with his Armani suits and drive his fancy Toyota 4Runner with a scooped hood. Yeah, you are in the FAFO find out stage. This is Russ from Russ's Rambling on about how our country is headed into a big depression.